Part 1, The Origin of Brotherhood. The first sound was wind. Long, hollow gusts crossing the flatlands of Indiana in the winter of 1930. The world stripped of color. Men lined up for bread that never came. Banks sealed their doors while families starved outside. It was not a time for justice. It was a time for survival. Inside the gray walls of the Indiana State Prison, two men learned what that truly meant. Harry Pierpont was the quiet one, tall, polished, almost too composed for a man in chains. He studied the world with the precision of a watchmaker. Every step of the guards, every echo of keys, every flicker of light in the corridor, all cataloged, memorized, filed away. To him, prison was not punishment. It was research. Across the yard, Homer Van Meter lived in a different rhythm. Restless, explosive, quick to laugh, and quicker to fight. He carried the kind of smile that made people uneasy,
energy on noise.
a smile that never reached the eyes. The guards called him a dog with a matchstick temper. They met during an argument in the mess hall. A plate shattered, silence fell. Van Meter, breathing hard, stared across the room at Pierpont, who hadn't even flinched. For a long second, neither moved. Then Pierpont said softly, "You waste too much energy on noise." That was the beginning. Over the next weeks, they spoke little, but watched each other constantly. The disciplined strategist and the impulsive fighter, two halves of the same hunger. Both had come from broken homes. Both had learned that the system never forgave the poor. But where Van Meter turned his anger outward, Pierpont turned it inward, polishing it, shaping it into something useful.
How do you plan to pull it off?
In the damp stillness of the prison library, Pierpont drew
With
his
patience
first escape.
And silence.
Pencil
and
marks,
silence.
careful and exact, shaped on stolen paper. He didn't tell Van Meter immediately. He waited, testing him, watching how he handled provocation, how quickly he calmed after rage. When he finally shared the idea, Van Meter grinned like a boy seeing fire for the first time. "How do you plan to pull it off?" he asked. "With patience," Pierpont said, "and silence." Silence became their code. They moved through the cell block like ghosts, speaking only in fragments. A cough, a glance, a tap on the pipe. Over months, they built a network, bribed guards, smuggled tools, copied keys. The plan was impossible, but so was their faith. The night of the escape was colder than bone. The air smelled of metal and rain. From the tower, the searchlight carved white paths across the yard. Pierpont waited until the wind howled, masking the sound of a lock snapping open. One by one, the cells unlatched. 12 men followed him into the dark. Gunfire tore through the air.
They're breaking out!
Screams.
Run!
Floodlights flared.
Get down!
By dawn,
Get down now!
the world outside belonged to them. Newspapers would later call it the Pierpont miracle. But there was no miracle, only calculation and timing. They ran for miles through fields glazed with frost, the sound of dogs behind them fading at the dawn. When they finally stopped, Van Meter dropped to his knees, gasping, laughing, wild. Pierpont just stood there, looking east toward the pale morning. "This is what freedom feels like," Van Meter
¡Rápido,
said.
rápido!
No,
No podemos parar.
Pierpont
Ayúdame.
replied. This is the beginning.
Sigan adelante, ya casi llegamos.
In that moment, something unspoken passed between them. Not friendship,
This
not
is what
trust, but
freedom
recognition.
feels like.
Each saw in the other the same wound,
No.
the same need to matter in a world that had
This
buried them. It
is the
wasn't
beginning.
loyalty that would bind them. It was the shared belief that justice was a lie built for men with money. Days later, they robbed their first bank. It wasn't about greed. It was revenge. Against the symbols that had broken their fathers, crushed their homes, and turned dignity into debt. The plan was flawless. Masks on, timers set, exit routes memorized. But perfection is fragile. The guard's hand moved too fast toward his gun. Van Meter reacted first. The shot echoed, clean and final. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. When they drove away, Van Meter's hands were trembling. Pierpont didn't speak. The car cut through the fog like a blade. At last, Pierpont said quietly, and did what was necessary. Van Meter looked at him, eyes wide, not with guilt, but with awe. That night, as they hid in a barn outside Toledo, Pierpont wrote notes in a small leather book. He recorded every detail, the time, the route, even the number of steps it took to reach the safe, but not the killing. He never wrote about the killing. Some things were better kept between ghosts. As the wind howled outside, Van Meter lit a cigarette, his face haloed in flame. "We're legends now," he said. Pierpont closed the book. "Not yet," he replied. "Legends don't get tired." In the quiet that followed, the barn creaked under the weight of snow. Somewhere far away, a siren cried through the night. It wasn't chasing them, not yet, but it
He
would.
reached for his gun.
Because for men
Right
like
at the top.
Pierpont and Van Meter, every moment of freedom was just another countdown to capture. And somewhere in that countdown, something human began to die.
Then he made a choice.
Part 2, first part. The morning after their escape, the world seemed too quiet. Frost clung to the windows of the old
hear 'em?
farmhouse where they hid,
The
sunlight
bells?
spilling in like a
They sound
secret
like
they didn't
sirens.
deserve. Pierpont studied the map laid out on the table, its edges curling from damp air. Van Meter paced near the window, restless, chewing the inside of his cheek. The silence between them was a weight neither could lift. For days they moved through small towns, changing cars, burning clothes, shaving in cheap motels. Their money was running through. Every headline spoke of their escape. Every stranger's glance felt
I don't
like
know.
a gun. When
I
Pierpont
feel
finally said, "It's time,"
Alive.
Van Meter didn't ask what he meant. He already knew. The town of Bluffton slept under gray skies.
Then you
The
understand
bank
it
sat
now.
on Main Street like a crown on a corpse. Marble pillars, glass doors, a symbol of everything that had once betrayed them. Pierpont had timed everything. 9 minutes, no more. 3 guards, 1 manager, 2 tellers. No alarms until the vault opened. Van Meter adjusted his tie in the reflection of the window before they walked in. The suit didn't fit him, not really. It clung awkwardly to his shoulders, but he liked the feeling of pretending. For a moment, they looked like businessmen instead of outlaws. Inside, the air was still.
We're legends now.
The tick of the lobby clock sounded
Not yet.
louder than breath.
Legends
Pierpont
don't
smiled
get
at the manager,
tired.
handed over a folded note. "Open the vault. No one gets hurt." The man's eyes widened and flicked to the gun under Pierpont's coat. Everything went perfectly until the guard moved. A sudden scrape of boots on tile, a flash of metal. Van Meter turned before he thought. The shot cracked like thunder, scattering dust from the ceiling. The smell of gunpowder filled the room. The guard dropped, clutching his chest, a red stain spreading fast. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Pierpont's pulse didn't even rise. He took the cash, stacked it neatly, and spoke with calm precision. "We leave now."
They said the vault was
Van
impenetrable.
Meter
Took
stood
us less than
frozen,
10 minutes,
staring at what
boys.
he had done.
Get down on the ground.
Smell,
Drop your weapon.
sound clung to him.
Move up.
His
Provide
hands
cover
shook
fire.
as he holstered the gun.
I'm reloading.
Pierpont's
Cover
voice
me.
sliced through the fog. Move. They left the way they came. 9 minutes, just as planned. Outside, the air hit like ice. The world was still turning, the church bells still ringing, and yet something inside them had shifted beyond repair. In the getaway car, Van Meter lit a cigarette with trembling fingers. He reached for his gun, he said quietly, as if asking for forgiveness. Pierpont's eyes stayed on the road.
Another round for
Then he
everyone.
made a choice.
We live tonight.
Miles passed, the smoke thickened. Somewhere between
To
towns,
Van
Van
Meter.
Meter began to laugh, short, nervous bursts that turned manic. "You hear them?" he said. "The bells? They sound like sirens." Pierpont didn't answer.
It was
His
bound
hands
to
were
happen.
steady on the wheel. In his mind, he was already planning the next job. The first kill hadn't shaken him. It had confirmed something he had always suspected. Order could only exist through control. And control demanded sacrifice. That night, in an abandoned barn, Pierpont cleaned the pistol in silence while Van Meter paced like a caged animal. The lamplight painted half his face in gold, the other half in darkness. "You're not sorry," Van Meter said suddenly. Pierpont looked up, eyes cold. "Are you?" "I don't know," Van Meter whispered. "I feel alive." Pierpont nodded slowly, almost approvingly. "Then you understand it now." Outside, wind swept through the broken boards, carrying the faint sound of a train in the distance, a reminder that the world kept moving, indifferent to the Part 3, the fall. By 1934, the wind that once carried their names now carried only the sound of sirens. The world that had once admired them began to close in. Harry Pierpont and Homer Van Meter were no longer outlaws. They were fugitives haunted by their own legend. Every new dawn felt borrowed. Pierpont had grown
police
thinner,
are outside. Stay
sharper,
sharp.
eyes sunken from sleepless nights spent mapping escape routes that no longer mattered. His once perfect
Hands in the
suits
air.
were now
Now.
wrinkled,
Keep them
his
where we can
shoes
see them.
dusted with
Do
the
it
mud
now.
of constant flight. Van Meter,
I'm looking
on
at
the other
Pierpont,
hand, had
and he's
become a
completely
creature of
calm.
impulse. A man drunk
It doesn't
on
make any
survival,
sense.
His laughter rough, his hands trembling.
We must
even
consider
still.
the facts objectively.
When John Dillinger
The
joined their ranks,
prosecution has
the air
failed to
between
meet
them
the burden of
shifted.
proof required for
Dillinger
a
was
conviction
light,
in this
where
case.
Pierpont was shadow, a man who
Because the
turned danger
world
into
stole
spectacle.
my choices.
Newspapers adored him.
I stole
calling
them
him
back.
the gentleman bandit. Pierpont hated it. He had built the gang with discipline, order, silence. Dillinger turned it into theater. Van Meter, drawn to the fame, drifted further from the man who once led him. Their robberies became unpredictable. One went wrong in St. Paul, a gunfight under flashing bank lights, bullets tearing through glass and marble. Civilians screamed, police swarmed, and for the first time, Pierpont's perfect timing failed. They escaped, but the precision was gone. In its place was chaos. That night, Pierpont sat alone in a rented room, staring at the gun on the table. His reflection in the mirror looked like a stranger, a man devoured by his own
I've never
creation.
felt so free!
Across town, Van Meter celebrated
Go
with
faster.
whiskey and
This is
women,
incredible.
laughing too loudly to drown out the ghosts. Weeks later, Dillinger was dead. The headlines screamed it across America. Van Meter smashed a bottle against the wall when he saw it. Pierpont simply folded the paper, placed it on the table, and whispered, "It was bound to happen." Something in him died that day, the illusion that genius could outthink fate. Their last heist was meant to fund an escape to Mexico, a small-town bank, quiet, simple. But exhaustion breeds mistakes. Pierpont's hand shook on the trigger. Van Meter fired too soon. The sirens came faster this time. They split up. Van Meter's car flipped under gunfire, rolling through a field of yellow grass. He crawled out, bloodied but laughing, defiant until the final shot silenced him. Pierpont hid for days, moving through barns and abandoned shacks like a ghost rehearsing his own funeral. When the police found him, he didn't resist. He was sitting on a wooden crate, revolver beside him, eyes calm. The arresting officer later said he looked like a man who'd already served his sentence inside his own head. At trial, Pierpont wore his best suit, spoke softly, and never pleaded. When asked why he did it, he answered, "Because the world stole my choices. I stole them back." No bravado, no guilt, just certainty. He was executed that winter. Outside the prison, the same wind blew across the fields, cold, endless, indifferent. In death, their names faded into myth. But the real story, the brotherhood, the madness, the slow erosion of two men who mistook survival for meaning, remained buried beneath the headlines. What begins as rebellion often ends as routine, and what begins